Hey everyone, welcome back. You know those moments when a new idea kind of clicks? Like, aha, now I get it. Get ready for a whole bunch of those because today we're diving into, well, you requested it, critical thinking.
Yeah, that's right. And we're going meta with it.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on one topic, we're looking at the core tools from the Critical Thinking Toolkit.
Which I love because honestly, who couldn't use a little more critical thinking in their lives these days?
Right.
And it's not about being a robot, right? It's about having the skills to navigate all the information, opinions, and let's be real, sometimes straight up BS out there.
That's where this book comes in. And one thing I found interesting is how it goes beyond just like logic puzzles and arguments. It gets into how critical thinking connects to language, morality, even politics.
Yeah, so it's not just for philosophy class, it's like for everyday life.
Totally. Think about it. We're constantly hit with news, social media, advertising, all pushing some kind of agenda, right?
Hmm.
Critical thinking helps us pick those messages apart, see what's underneath so we can make smarter choices. See through the noise, get to what really matters.
Exactly. And the book's intro really highlights this. It's not about always being right, but about knowing how we even decide what's right, what's fair, what's justifiable. It's about the framework we use.
Okay, so how do we build that framework? The book uses some terms that can sound a little intimidating at first, like claims and truth conditions.
Yeah, but they're not as complex as they sound once you break them down, which the book does really well. It starts with the idea that before we even judge an argument, we got to understand its parts, right? Like claims. A claim is basically any statement that's either true or false.
So the sky is blue, that's a claim.
Exactly. And every claim has what the book calls truth conditions. These are the things that have to be true for the claim itself to be true. So for the sky is blue to be true, well, the sky actually has to be blue. Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, for a simple claim like that. But what about the more complicated ones?
That's where it gets interesting. As claims get more complex, so do their truth conditions. Think about this policy will boost the economy. There's so much involved there, proving or disproving, that is way harder.
So critical thinking helps us take those complicated claims and figure out what would actually have to be true for this to make sense.
Exactly. It's not taking things at face value, but digging deeper, asking questions, wanting evidence.
Like being an information detective.
Speaking of detectives, that brings us to a key difference. Arguments versus explanations.
Oh, I always mix those up.
Happens to the best of us. An argument tries to convince you that something is true, while an explanation shows you how or why something is the way it is.
Okay, so argument is like you're trying to win a debate. An explanation is more like teaching someone something.
Great way to put it. Understanding that difference is crucial because people often try to use explanations as proof. But just because you can explain something doesn't mean it's true.
So it's about recognizing when someone's trying to persuade us versus just giving us information.
Exactly. And that's where those aha moments kick in. Because once you start thinking this way, you see it everywhere. News articles, political speeches, even just chatting with someone.
And maybe even win a few arguments along the way, right?
Well, critical thinking isn't just about winning. It's about better conversations, even when you disagree. But we'll get into that more later.
Dude, this is already blowing my mind. I feel like this is going to change how I see, like, everything.
That's the power of it. It gives you the tools to question assumptions, evaluate evidence, form your own informed opinions. And believe me, once you start, there's no going back. Sounds like we're ready to tackle those arguments.
Oh, yeah. I am ready to, like, seriously upgrade my BS detector.
Well, this book, it's got you covered. It has a whole section on logical fallacies. Those, like, errors in reasoning that trip us up, even when we think we're being, totally logical.
Oh, man, those fallacies, they're everywhere once you start to notice them.
They really are.
Yeah.
And they can be so persuasive, too, because they often tap into our emotions or our biases. But once you learn to recognize them, it's like you can see through the smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, it's like having X-ray vision for bad arguments.
Exactly. So let's unpack a few of the most common ones from the book. And we can start with one I think we've all probably fallen victim to, the ad hominem fallacy.
Yes. The classic attack the person, not the argument move.
Exactly. It's all about discrediting an argument. By like attacking the person making it, instead of actually addressing the points they're making, like saying, well, you can't trust anything she says. She's a terrible driver.
Okay, that's hilarious. But yeah, I totally see how easy it is to dismiss someone's argument because of, like, random personal details.
It's a natural human reaction for sure. But we got to remember, A person's character doesn't automatically mean their argument is wrong.
Right.
We have to separate the messenger from the message, right?
So next time I'm about to go for the ad hominem attack, I'll just picture that terrible driver trying to win a debate.
Perfect. Now, another fallacy that's huge, especially these days with so much misinformation out there, is the appeal to ignorance.
Oh, this one I know. It's like, well, you can't prove aliens don't exist, so they must be real.
You got it. The appeal to ignorance tries to flip the script. It says that because something hasn't been proven false, it must be true. But not having evidence doesn't make something true.
That's a good one to keep in mind when you're like down those online rabbit holes.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about twisting arguments, we can't forget the straw man fallacy.
This one drives me crazy. It's when someone takes your argument and like twists it into something completely different so it's easier to attack.
Exactly. They build up this straw man, which is like a weaker version of what you actually said. Then they knock it down as if they've defeated your real point. It's such a, I don't know, a cheap move, but it works if you're not careful.
This is making me realize how critical thinking is also about being a good listener, like actually paying attention to what the other person is saying, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
That is crucial. It's not about winning some debate, but understanding different views and trying to get closer to, what's actually true, even if it's messy.
Okay, one more fallacy I gotta ask about, because it's everywhere, especially in politics, is the false dilemma.
Ah, yes. You're either with us or against us. This fallacy pretends there's only two extreme options, when in reality it's more complicated, right? More shades of gray.
So divisive, it forces people to choose sides when the real answer might be somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. Critical thinking helps us break out of those false choices and consider like the whole spectrum of possibilities.
I'm starting to feel like some kind of fallacy-busting ninja over here, but this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's got to be tons of other ways our brains can mess us up.
Oh, absolutely. And that leads us to a whole other level of critical thinking, understanding how our own minds can mislead us. It's not just about spotting bad arguments out there, but the potential for bias and error in ourselves.
Okay, now, this is getting really interesting. I know we've mentioned things like confirmation bias and availability error before, but can we go deeper on those? Because those seem so relevant to, like, how we process information every single day. So we're talking about how even when we think we're being objective, our own minds can throw us a curveball.
Yeah, it's like we all have these built-in cognitive biases. They're like shortcuts our brains use to process stuff quickly. But sometimes those shortcuts, they lead to mistakes in how we think.
Our brain's trying to be efficient, but taking the wrong exit, kinda.
Perfect analogy. Take confirmation bias. Ever notice how you're drawn to info that backs up what you already believe, even if it's not the strongest evidence?
Oh, all the time. Social media is the worst for that, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're in echo chambers, just hearing more of our own opinions.
Confirmation bias in a nutshell. And it's dangerous because it stops us from seeing the whole picture, being open to other viewpoints.
Putting on blinders, basically ignoring anything that challenges us.
And then there's availability error, another tricky one. This is when we think something's more likely to happen, just because we can easily remember examples of it.
So, like, if I keep hearing about shark attacks on the news, I start thinking they're way more common than they really are.
Exactly. Our brains latch onto vivid, emotional stuff, so it feels more significant, even if it's statistically rare.
So how do you fight that? If it's how our brains are wired, can we even change it?
Awareness is huge. Once you know about these biases, you can catch yourself falling for them. And it's key to actively look for different views, stuff that challenges what you think you know.
So not just hanging out with people who agree with me all the time. Got it. Got to get out of my comfort zone a bit.
Exactly. Critical thinking means being open to new info, even being willing to change your mind when the evidence is strong. Always got to question your own assumptions.
Makes you realize how important it is to be humble, right? We don't have it all figured out. We're going to get stuff wrong sometimes.
Absolutely. Everyone makes mistakes. That's being human.
Yeah.
Critical thinking isn't about being perfect, but about knowing our limits and always trying to make the most rational, informed choices we can.
Man, this has been eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit now, not just for judging information, but my own thinking.
And that's what's so cool about it. It's more than skills. It's a way of life.
Yeah.
Approaching the world with curiosity, healthy skepticism, really wanting to figure things out.
This deep dive has definitely got me fired up to be more critical, more thoughtful in everything I do.
And remember, this is just the start. The more you use these skills, the sharper they get. Critical thinking's a lifelong thing you never stop learning.
Well, I'm ready for that journey. Thanks for being our guide today. I really appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Just remember, keep questioning, keep exploring, keep those critical thinking muscles working.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into critical thinking. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Until next time, keep those minds open and stay curious out there.